to cultivate our own potential to hold awe in more moments leads us to being able to hold that even when the outer world is trying to pull us from that place. But at this moment in time, most of us feel like when we feel awe or joy or beauty or wonder, that it's because of something that's happened to us. And if we feel fear and anger and worry, it's because something's happening to us. We need to separate those experiences so that we can take ownership of how we choose to feel. If I have the choice, do I want to feel joyful or worried and anxious? I want to choose joyful. So then how do I cultivate that? How do I find wonder regardless of what's going on?
Would you be willing to say anything about, at this point in your experience, how you do that?
I can do that. And the preamble is that it's not the way. It's a myriad of things. Like any moment is my opportunity to find and move into that non-causal, meaning it's not impacted by the outer world, non-causal peace. And peace is really the starting point, a calm, so I can vibrate to higher octaves of joy and overflowing compassion and bliss. So peace is our baseline. So any moment is my opportunity. And so if I hold that any moment is my opportunity, then whatever the opportunity is providing, there is a way to open to it.
Right.
But that way may vary for me. Like I don't have one way that I approach all of the opportunities that touch me in a day.
Right.
So I can share some of them. I think meditation is a really essential practice. I know that it can be challenging for people to start a practice and to maintain a practice. I think that's important, and kind of juxtapositioned with that, I think of spiritual practice, the proof's in the pudding. If it's something that brings you to greater vibration, then that's a practice that works. Yeah, meditation is one that does not often feel like it's working at the beginning, or even at different various stages within a practice. So even as I start to talk about what practices those might be, it looks like I'm talking about a paradox. Use what works, but make sure you meditate even if it doesn't feel like it's working.
Right. But you have a specific idea of what meditation is meant to do.
Well, I think we use the word meditation to mean many different things. I mean, I like the Hebrew word for meditation, hitbodedut. Hitbodedut meaning going to yourself, going into yourself. That's the exact.
Yeah, being alone with oneself.
Being alone with oneself. There's many kinds of meditation when we use that word, but I think the essentialness of meditation, and the way I would use that word, is to go to oneself. And in taking time with oneself, you start to realize that you are not the ego that you've been identifying with. You start to have a separation and witness the ego in all of its angst and all of its attempts to control the world around it. And there's this pause, there's this gap, there's this separation, and then a greater realization that you are actually something beyond that egoic self. I think a mantra meditation is really helpful because a mantra is almost like a white noise that drowns out that constant chatter of the mind. So it in that way, it quiets the mind because you're not paying attention to the chatter of it. And a mantra can lead you to a silence of a greater space. So as we think again, we come back to mantra. As we're doing mantra, we not consciously enter something more. Then we realize we're somewhere more, and we surprise ourselves and jump back into the ego. There's many ways to do that other than mantra. We were talking just the other day about humming, which I love. So for some people, especially at this time when there's so many things to be anxious about, that to sit silently with a mantra feels too anxious. It's very hard to sit still. And then we feel like we're failing, and then that makes it even worse. Humming is great. We create our own white noise. It looks like this. sitting in meditation. So again, there's an auditory way of mantra. There's a mental imaging of mantra, an internal quiet repetition of mantra. There's a visual, like looking at a candle flame, paying attention to it. When our mind goes away from that, we come back to it. But all of it is separating from the ongoing workings of the egoic co-opting of our mind. How do we separate from that so we realize we are not that egoic bit?
Right.
So there's just many ways. And I encourage people to find a meditative practice that works and to be patient in and not expecting to sit for long periods of time if that's not working, to find a way of meditation that works. I think it's really important to start to become aware of where we are in any given moment. So one of the spiritual practices that I use the most in my waking hour is to pause and tend to how I'm feeling, what feelings are arising, where's my mind, am I actually using my mind where I want it, or has my ego pulled it to some other place? So just the awareness, before I choose a spiritual practice to help me, just the awareness is a spiritual practice in and of itself.
Right.
Because I want to fine-tune the ability to recognize when my ego has pulled me into a pattern, in a direction that I choose not. And we spend so much of our time in a default setting where the ego is co-opting the mind and then touching the feelings and constricting those feelings without my permission. And I want that awareness and I want the pause so I can have the freedom to make a choice about where I want my attention to be. So I would say that's one of my greatest opportunities in the moments throughout a day. Where am I? Where is my consciousness? Am I even aware, or am I running by default? And that as I shine a light on that, as I illuminate where I am, then I have new choices to make. Then I have new opportunities for how I will respond. If I'm not aware of where I am, I will be reactive, and I want to be aware so that I can make choices. And the choices depend on where I'm at. If I'm feeling the grief and sadness, when I touch the pain that is humanity today, I don't want to cut off my flow. If I realize I'm feeling that, I want to honor, I want to allow that to flow. Yet I don't want to get more engaged in it. So if I feel the pain of everybody impacted by COVID today, that's on my mind, there are times that I feel the heaviness of that pain. When I shine my consciousness on that, when I illuminate how I am feeling, and that's what comes up, I want to allow that and embrace that. I don't need to push it away. Yet, I also then want to do an internal dialogue so that I don't fall into it. When I realize how I'm feeling, which is a direct barometer of my vibration, I can use my mind. I can use the gift of my mind to help me feel better or worse. So if I realize I'm feeling the heaviness of the pain of all of the suffering from what's unfolding around COVID,
Right.
I can speak, yeah, it's terrible, and look how many people are dying every second, and and I can make it worse and worse and worse, and I can feel worse, and I can feel it happening in my body. I mean, that does not serve me. It does not serve anybody who is suffering in this way, in this moment. So I want to hold that knowing of that pain and saying, okay, what can I do now? What is my responsibility in being aware of that? My responsibility is to have an outflowing of compassion. My responsibility is to hold a consciousness that allows a solution that's beyond the problem. My responsibility is to not fall into the awfulness of it, because I don't do my body any good. I change the entire chemical cascade in my body when I fall into the horror of what's
Right.
unfolding. Yet I don't want to push it away or close it off, because then I close off a flow. We're intended to flow with the feelings of being human. So again, I'm aware that I may feel that feeling again, in this case, the pain of the suffering. I shed a light on it. I hold it in an embrace. I allow that grief to flow over me. And I use some cognitive ability to let me know that I want to direct my time and my energy toward upliftment of my own self and of those that I impact. That I impact just by what I radiate out into the world, that I impact by my blessings, my consciousness, where it's focused, and by my sacred actions, how I choose to act in the world.
Right.
But if I'm all bound up in it, if it's clogged and stuck, and I make it worse by my thoughts, I'm not helping myself, I'm not helping anybody. So every moment becomes an opportunity to explore practice, to vibrate at a higher frequency, and my feelings tell me whether I'm doing that or not. And then the challenge becomes, well, I'm not doing it, I still feel really anxious, I'm a failure. And we have to be really careful, because we're practicing new patterns. A spiritual practice is practicing new patterns, and we have decades of patterns that we've learned through culture, through our parents, through our families, through our schools, through our culture, and through our own practicing.
Mm-hmm.
The patterns that don't serve us, that make our life more challenging, that we feel the suffering of those patterns. So when we're practicing a spiritual practice to help us open to more, we have to be so gentle, knowing what it takes to change a pattern. We just come back, tend to it, and then try again, and try again, and try again. Spiritual practice is getting up one more time, then we fall down, getting up one more time, then we fall down. But the kindness and compassion that we hold ourselves in when we feel a stuckness or an inability to find a practice that helps us feel better is a practice in and of itself, that self-compassion.